You've probably heard of David Heinemeier Hansson, or DHH. He's the guy who created Ruby on Rails, and he's one of the most brilliant and often controversial thinkers in the tech world. But to really get what makes him tick, you have to understand his journey. It's a journey that shaped a whole philosophy about work, business, and life. Okay, let's dive in. So this quote, it really cuts to the core of everything DHH believes. He's calling out what he sees as this deep insecurity in programming. See, most of what we do on the web boils down to CRUD, just creating, reading, updating, and deleting stuff. But he argues that a lot of developers feel this existential dread about how simple that is, so they just invent these insane layers of complexity to make their jobs feel more important. And that, right there, is the big conflict of his entire career, simplicity versus needless complexity. So what's really fueling this crusade of his? This isn't just about, which programming language is better. It's a really deeply held philosophy, and it was born from a super personal journey. To understand DHH, we've got to go all the way back to the beginning. Now, for a guy who became a programming legend, you'd think he had an easy start, right? Nope, not even close. In fact, his early struggles are the absolute key to understanding why he cares so much about making things friendly for the programmer. Okay, so his first try was as a kid back in the 80s. He'd spend hours and hours typing in game code from a magazine, only for it to just not work. He didn't even get the basic concept of a variable. Then, his second try in the early 90s with a language that literally had easy in the name, Easyamos. That failed too. And at that point, he was convinced, okay, I'm just not smart enough for this. But the third time, that was the charm. And the big success wasn't some complex game. It was a single blinking HTML tag. And that right there, that's the whole point of his early years. The big breakthrough wasn't about mastering some difficult algorithm. It was the instant rewarding feeling of making something that he could see on the web. That feeling of direct, permissionless creation, that became the North Star for his entire career. So with this little bit of confidence, DHH starts building websites using PHP, which was the big language back then. He was getting the job done, but he wasn't inspired. And that all changed when he stumbled upon a language that turned programming from just a job into a genuine craft. You can hear it in his own words. He describes his time with PHP as using a blunt instrument. It was a tool you had to smack the computer with to get what you want. It worked, sure, but it was just a means to an end. There was no joy in it. And then he found Ruby. And the thing that grabbed him was purely how it looked. But to DHH, that aesthetic was everything. In Ruby, he saw what wasn't there. No ugly semicolons everywhere. And when he compared it to the line noise of other languages like the double underscores in Python's init function, Ruby just felt clean. It felt like it was designed for a person, not for a machine. And that was the revelation, the big one. It hit him that a programming language could be optimized for beauty, for programmer happiness. It didn't have to just be a bunch of cryptic commands you feed a computer. It could actually be expressive, almost like poetry. You see, Ruby's creator, a guy nicknamed Mats, designed the language to fundamentally trust the programmer. This lets developers do these incredible things, like adding new powers to the most basic parts of the language. DHA saw that and just ran with it when he created Rails, leading to code that felt, well, kind of magical. This one line of code is basically a philosophical statement. Think about it. He didn't just write something that's easy to read. He literally taught the number 5 to understand the concept of days. You don't need a comment to explain what's happening. The code is the explanation. This is human-centric design, and it's the absolute soul of Ruby on Rails. Okay, so now he's armed with this new philosophy and this beautiful tool, Ruby. He sets out to build a framework that would basically bottle up all these principles. And this was the birth of Ruby on Rails, and with it, his official crusade against complexity. The big idea behind Rails is this thing called convention over configuration. It sounds kind of technical, but the concept is actually really simple.
The framework should make most of the common, boring decisions for you. So instead of you having to set up every little thing from scratch, Rails gives you sensible defaults. It frees you up to focus on the stuff that actually makes your app special. And this all comes together in what's called the Rails Doctrine. It's his manifesto. It spells out everything we've been talking about: programmer happiness, beautiful code, but it also adds some other cool principles, like omakase, which is the idea that the framework provides a full chef-selected menu, and provide sharp knives, which is all about trusting developers to use powerful tools the right way. And DHH has a very direct way of explaining that omakase principle. As he puts it, he's not just giving you a box of Legos and a manual. He's giving you the finished toy. This whole philosophy respects your time by giving you a fully working application right out of the box, so you don't have to waste time rebuilding the same foundation again and again and again.
Now, this way of thinking, of challenging the norm, fighting for simplicity, and believing in craftsmanship, it doesn't just stop with code. Not for DHH. He applies the exact same logic to his business and to his life. The most famous example of this happened just a few years ago. While literally the entire tech industry was stampeding into the cloud, DHH did the complete opposite. He announced that his companies, Basecamp and Hey, were leaving the cloud to run on their own physical servers. It was a move that just baffled people. And the projected savings? Get this, around $10 million over 5 years. For DHH, the cloud had just become another form of that complexity he hates, a confusing rental model that you get locked into. By owning his own hardware, he got back control and simplicity, and he proved that what the industry calls a best practice isn't always the best for you. This same contrarian streak applies to his philosophy on life. He totally rejects that whole Silicon Valley dream of working yourself into the ground for a decade, selling your company, and retiring to what he calls Mojito Island. For DHH, the joy is in the work itself. The goal is to build a calm, sustainable company that you actually enjoy running for the long haul. So where does all this leave us? DHH's philosophy of human-centric craftsmanship has been fighting off industry fads for 20 years now. But today, it's facing its greatest challenge yet, the age of AI. DHH sees AI as more than just a productivity tool. He sees it as a potential threat to the very soul of programming. He worries that if AI does all the coding, the programmer just gets demoted to a project manager, just telling a machine what to do, instead of doing the deeply satisfying creative work of writing the code yourself. And he has this great analogy for it. He compares it to playing the guitar. We have perfect digital recordings of every song ever made, right? But millions of people still learn to play. Why? Because the joy is in the process, the practice, the feeling of commanding the instrument yourself. And he argues that programming is a craft with that exact same kind of value. And that leaves us with the big question for the future, doesn't it? DHH's entire journey has been this quest for a more humane, simple, and joyful way to build things. As AI gets more and more powerful, his argument that the craft itself matters becomes more urgent than ever. So is that joy just a luxury? Or is it the very thing we can't afford to lose?